Good morning. My name is Barbara Fuller, and as Chair of the Board, I welcome you to this virtual August 17th, 2021 working session of the Washtenaw County Board of Road Commissioners. Our Communications Manager, Emily Kaiser, will now describe how our virtual meetings operate, how to access the agenda packet, and how people may participate remotely. Emily?
Thanks, Commissioner. Again, thank you for joining the Washtenaw County Road Commission for today's virtual working session. Before we start the meeting, there are a few items just to cover. If you'd like to make public comment during the public comment portion of the meeting, we will provide instructions and prompt you at the appropriate time in the agenda to virtually raise your hand. This can be done through computer or touch-tone phone. The chat feature on the Zoom meeting is available only as technical support for users on their computer or smartphone. If you're experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, please submit a comment in the chat feature and I will help you troubleshoot. If you are a commissioner or a staff member experiencing technical issues, please contact the IT help desk and they'll help you during the meeting. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded. A link to the video will be posted to wcroads.org in the next day or two. Today's meeting agenda is posted on wcroads.org as well, and there's a link available in the chat if you're joining us from your computer. And now I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Fuller.
Thank you, Emily. And I will formally call this working session to order. And if Aaron would please call the roll.
Chair Barb Fuller.
Present, participating remotely from Scioto Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Vice Chair Rod Green.
Good morning. I am participating from Superior Township, Michigan.
Commissioner Doug Fuller.
Present and is participating remotely from Scioto Township.
Commissioner Gloria Yanis has an excused absence. So Commissioner Joanne McCollum.
Present, and I am participating remotely from Ypsilanti Township, Washtenaw County.
Managing Director Cheryl Siddle.
Here.
County Highway Engineer Matt McDonald.
Here.
Director of Operations Jim Harmon.
Present.
Director of Finance and IT Dan Ackerman.
Here.
We're all set, and we'll move right into the public participation portion of our agenda. This is the time set aside on the agenda to receive comments from the public. This is not intended to be a period for dialogue. Each person will be allotted 3 minutes to address the board. Emily, do we have anyone who wishes to address the board?
We don't at this time, Commissioner. I'm going to run through the instructions really quickly and then we can double check again. But if you'd like to make public comment, that we ask that you virtually raise your hand now. If you're viewing the meeting on your computer, you want to first make sure to click join audio and then you raise your hand by clicking the participants or reactions button at the bottom of your screen or the raise and then look for the raise hand button. If you dialed into the meeting from your touch-tone phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. I will unmute participants with a raised hand one at a time. I will announce your username or the last 4 digits of your phone number when it's your turn to speak. Please state your name and address before beginning your comments. And at this time, Commissioner, it doesn't look like we have any raised hands.
All right. We will move to our first item on the working session agenda, which is equipment and facilities update. Cheryl?
All right. Well, we have a lot of information to cover this morning. Jim did promise me that he would do his level best to keep this to an hour. So I am not going to take up any of his precious time. And we are moving fast and furious. So buckle in and I'm going to hand it right over to Mr. Harmon.
Cheryl, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I have 2 individuals that are joining me this morning. I'm going to start with the equipment update, and then when we've concluded that, I'll go to the facilities update. Mike Livesey's joined us. Mike, are you able to turn your camera on to wave and say hi? Mike is our equipment maintenance supervisor and certainly was integral in helping me prepare this presentation and gather all the data. Mike, if you're unable to turn your camera on at this point, nope, looks like something's happening. There he is. Welcome, Mike. You're muted, that's okay. That's all right. And the other individual that's joining us is Dennis Bussey. Dennis is new to the Road Commission, just joined us yesterday. And Dennis is our new facilities supervisor. So Dennis, welcome. Dennis will be joining us for this morning's working session and also this afternoon for the regular meeting, just to get acquainted with these proceedings and how the board goes about doing its business. So thank you both for being here today. I am going to share my screen and get started. So,
Jim, while you do that, I would just like to express my appreciation for having received the PowerPoint presentations in advance so that we could look at them and be prepared to discuss them intelligently. Really do appreciate both materials you provided and also those from Matt McDonnell. And I suspect Emily had a hand in this stuff too. So thanks, everybody.
you're welcome. We know that's really helpful in preparation for these meetings. With that said, we'll get started with the equipment update. Give a general overview on a couple of categories of the fleet. We've got over 500 pieces of equipment. About 150 of that moves, is mobile. The remainder are attachments and stationary pieces of equipment. What I want to do is quickly zero in on the recommendations for next year. But before we do that, I kind of want to give an update on some of these major categories. First, we'll start, and first, Commissioner Fuller, I want to make sure you can see this presentation. Very good. Start with our trends and history. Our board has made a strong commitment to our fleet. As you can see, back in 2008, we were not investing very much money in equipment, and the condition of our fleet reflected that. At that time, just about 2 years before this, the investment was zero. We've got millions of dollars in equipment. It's essential to fulfill our statutory mission in maintaining our road system. We're a very mechanized organization, as all road commissions are, and we depend on reliable equipment that's fully functional and able to perform the vast array of activities that we have to perform for the traveling public. So you can see back in 08, 09, we were spending $600,000–700,000 a year in equipment. And keeping in mind back then, a heavy truck was about $125,000, $130,000 equipped. And it was a pretty basic dump truck. Things have gotten far more sophisticated since then, and rightly so. We're able to accomplish a great deal more with this higher level of sophistication. We're much more effective, much more efficient, more productive now, but it comes with a cost. A brand new heavy truck is about $290,000, totally equipped and work ready. So what I really want to illustrate here is the board's decisions over the last many years to increase the investment and get to a point that I would suggest is appropriate for the size of our road commission and the amount of equipment that we own and operate and must maintain. And you can see now we're up in the range of approximately $4 million a year in capital outlay for road equipment. And that has made a profound difference. And I know Mike was nodding his head as he's viewing this. This not only has improved our efficiency, but it's reduced our downtime. Equipment is far more reliable. And there's nothing worse than being in the middle of a snowstorm and going to start a piece of equipment, pulling it out on the road, and it breaks down. And now what? So we've been working steadily, commissioners, in improving the state of the fleet and getting to a point where things are far more reliable and productive.
Jim, I have a question.
Please.
Would you please remind me how long it takes from the time that you place an order for a piece of equipment before we actually get it on the premises, ready to put out on the road and get to work?
Thank you for that question. It certainly depends on the piece of equipment, specifically a heavy truck that we use universally year-round, winter and non-winter. It is presently about 15 months from the point of order to actually taking delivery of it and be able to put it into service. And that'll lead to the conclusion of this presentation, the recommendations that I have for the board, and I hope that the board would be comfortable, as it has been for the last couple of years, in authorizing purchase for equipment like that now, so that we can get our place in line, hopefully get ahead of some of our peer road commissions, and get that order going. With the supply chain challenges within our nation and across the globe, it is certainly impacting the production, manufacture, upfitting, and delivery of equipment. So the sooner we can make those decisions, the better. The other side, Barb, is that the market is highly volatile and we're seeing costs inflate month over month over month. So the vendors are only truly able to honor a quotation for about 30 days. And then we're seeing inflation the next month. Commissioner Green, I see his hand is up.
Yes, looking at your chart, we know that we've had a trend of an increase in capital expenditures, but I'm just looking at the year for 2015, where there was a dramatic increase and then another dramatic decrease. What happened during that time period, if you recall?
Carryover and timing kind of goes back to Commissioner Fuller's question. We place the order and we don't expend the funds till we actually take delivery of the equipment. Commissioner Green, accept it, and then we pay the invoice. So what you see here in 2013, 14, 15, 16, you see that effect where the board had appropriated, these are actual expenditures for that fiscal year. And so the board authorized the purchase, and it took months and months and months, and we didn't take delivery of the equipment until after January 1. So those expenses then translated into the next fiscal year. And it was just a matter of timing on when we actually expended the money. Now you can see this increasing trend, and we're plateauing around the $4 million mark in 2019, 2021. And with the timing of the board's purchase authorizations, we're doing a lot better in taking delivery of the equipment within the fiscal year that you intended us to. Okay. This is a truck that we currently own and operate. It's a 2021 Western Star. Heavy truck, tandem axle. You can see it's got 2 axles in the back behind this wing plow. This is fully outfitted for winter maintenance. In the non-winter time, we typically will take the wing plows off. It's a lot of extra weight that we don't need to carry around in the summer. So the crews can dismount this and we can store those blades. But this truck is universal year round. We use it to grade gravel roads. We use it to haul material like a dump truck. We use it to place material. So we can put limestone inside of this dump box, and then using the conveyor systems that are outfitted on that dump box, we can strategically place material right, left, or back for patching and all of our grading and road maintenance operations. Put a variety of materials in this. We can put haul a wood chipper behind it and shoot wood chips into it after, for cleanup from storm damage like we just went through. So this truck is set up and specifically specified for a variety of tasks on purpose. And that has improved our efficiency tenfold. But that's a $290,000 investment right there. I think in 1998, I paid $120,000 for my house. So it's mind-boggling, the cost of these things. It is a depreciating asset. We have, up to this point, worked hard to use this as much as possible on the state highway system. That's important because MDOT reimburses us over the depreciation period for this piece of equipment, basically pays the board, pays the road commission back for the initial capital investment. So we'll pay $290,000, and over the span of the succeeding 5-6 years, MDOT is reimbursing us for that cost as that piece of equipment depreciates. And that's been very useful, very powerful funding mechanism. The cab chassis is purchased off of typically My Deal through the state bulk purchasing program. We get a big discount on the cab and chassis. So you can think of that as a bare bones truck. And then we have it upfitted. So they put another vendor under My Deal or the city of Rochester's bulk purchasing municipal program. We get big discounts for both of those, does all the upfitting. So that's where the plows are mounted and the dump box is put on, hydraulic tank, the underbody scraper that's here under this step, and all the other attachments and features are done separately. So the board is approving usually 2 purchase authorizations, one for the cab chassis and then one for the upfitting. In total, $290,000. Commissioner Green.
What's the life expectancy? Is it 10 years?
Yes, our life expectancy for this truck is actually 180 months, so that's 15 years or 100,000 miles, whichever comes first. And we tend to hit the miles before we hit the years. We get a lot of longevity out of these things, but they are working in a very hostile, corrosive environment, and it requires good maintenance, which Mike and his team and our talented drivers and operators take very seriously. That's an important asset, and we want to get that life out of it. This also, just another feature, has saddle tanks, this white plastic tank. There's one on each side that holds a volume of mineral brine that we use for de-icing, so that the plumbing on this truck allows us to apply brine to the rock salt, and that really makes this a lot more effective de-icing pavement in the wintertime. This is the cab chassis, and this is one of our new trucks that you approved last year. This is sitting at our main yard right now. There are 4 of these. This is an international truck versus the Western Star that I showed you. This is a Western Star model make, and this is an international make. Both are available off of the My Deal bulk purchasing program. We've opted to go with international because it was a slightly better price point, and it's honestly easier for the upfitter to mount all the stuff on compared to the Western Star. So there's an economic and a practical advantage with this. Also, the Western Stars, our vendor is out of Lansing, D&K Truck, and International is located here in Ypsilanti off of Michigan Avenue, and they also have a shop in Jackson. So the practicality for warranty and service, and if we have to take this to the dealer, it's nice to have them in Washtenaw County or just down the road in Jackson rather than transporting all the way to Lansing. So some of the practical considerations that Mike Livesey has impressed on me and that I fully accept. Just good practical decision. This will go up to Truck and Trailer and Howell, and they will upfit this. Truck and Trailer Specialties is our upfitter that you approved last year, and they will mount all of the attachments and all the features on this bare bones truck chassis.
Jim, it
Jim,
looks
you've
like
got a
Commissioner
question from
McCollum.
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, please.
Oh, Jim, I was just wondering, this one, the International, looks like has more lift, and maybe it's just how I'm seeing the picture. I'm not seeing it right, but it just seems more, maybe because the other one is fitted and this one isn't. But is that true? Is the International more lifted, and is that better?
It's equivalent. I think it's part of the fender style. You can see this one looks lower and that looks higher. And I think it has everything to do with the style of fender in the reveal here. So it deceives you into thinking it's much higher, but similar. Also this, just how the hood comes around, it comes down over the frame rails more than this. But a lot of this is going to get covered up with all the features that are going to be mounted on this thing. They're equivalent. They're both tandem axle, the same load rating. They're basically very similar trucks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have 52 heavy trucks. We need 46 in the wintertime. We've got 46 routes. We like to have some spares. If anything goes down for any reason, to have some spare trucks that are operable that we can put a driver in and continue with our service delivery. We actually have more than 52. There are several that are parked here at the main yard that are awaiting getting stripped down and prepared for auction. Commissioner McCollum, your hand's still up?
Sorry.
That's okay. Replacement schedule for these is 180 months, 100,000, whichever we hit first. And here's the good stuff. So I said we 290,000 each. Out of this fleet of 52, there's about 14 trucks that are overdue for replacement. That number used to be a lot higher. So kudos to the board and your predecessors for the commitment to helping improve the state of this part of our fleet. And this next graph, I think, illustrates that. So add up 14 times 290 is a little over $4 million in current needs just for this category of the fleet. So here is really what I want to demonstrate is with this category of the fleet, the heavy trucks, we look at the average age. So we look at the age of all of the trucks, where are we at average? And as of this year, we've driven that average age down to 85 months. Why is that important? We want to be around 90, roughly half of our replacement schedule. The point here is that the fleet's getting younger. It's getting newer. And that's because of the budget appropriations that you've authorized, the investments that you've made. You have improved the status of the heavy truck fleet. There's still work to be done. There's $4 million in needs right now, and this never ends. But we've over the period of several years, we're getting to the point where we're now managing this fleet. And we're in a position where we're at replacement schedule, and we're not in such a deep hole as we were back in 2008, 2009. And when we fire up the equipment and use it, put it to work, it holds up and runs. There's a reliability factor that's incredibly important. Commissioner Fuller?
I see that on the previous page, page 5, the replacement schedule is 180 months.
Yes.
But you've got a target of 90 months. Can you explain?
Yes. You're going to expect that you've got brand new trucks that have very few months on them, and then you've got some older ones. And then so you've got basically a bell curve. Old trucks, new trucks, and trucks that are middle-aged, like all of you, middle-aged. And so you've got a demographic, if you will, of the age of the equipment, and you're hoping that you're somewhere right in the middle of that distribution. When you look at the average age of all the trucks combined, some are going to be approaching 180, some are in the 10-year, 9-year range, and some are brand new. They're babies. They're brand new, fresh out of the box, and we're getting ready to put them to service. So half of that replacement schedule is where we're looking. So you can see it's a 30% improvement since 2014. And that's due to some significant investment by this board. Then we look at miles, the odometer reading on these things. The average odometer reading back in 2014 was 110,000, the average. So we had a lot more trucks that were overdue replacement then, and we've rapidly been driving that number down. So the average odometer is about 73, 72,000. Again, it's similar to that age. It's a bell curve. You're hoping that you're in the middle in terms of that average number. Commissioner McCollum?
Yes. Earlier you said that there's 52 trucks and there's 46
snow routes.
Yeah. So like when it's snowing, are we able to cover all those districts because we do have the vehicle to use that, or we don't have enough people for that?
We are able. Right now we have a number of vacancies. We're moving people around. So we may have a district like District 2, the district that you reside in, where we're down 5 drivers. And so we are moving people from the main yard or from District 6 up in the northeast part of the county. We'll move a person or people over to District 2 to backfill those vacancies and operate trucks to cover all those routes. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge,
Yeah,
no question. Yeah. So our target for average miles, we want to get down to 50,000. We have improved, and you can see we're getting there. So that's heavy trucks. That's really the core of the fleet. That's the most important category that I wanted to focus on initially for you. And that's a major part of our total capital investment that I'm proposing for next year. I'll get to that in a minute. Another thing is pickup trucks. We have many, almost 50 pickup trucks used by our engineering department staff and by our operations staff. They're half-ton pickups and 3/4-ton pickups. The 3/4-ton pickups are those GMC 2500 series. Everything we're buying now is 4-wheel drive. Half-tons are suitable for many of our staff. 3/4 tons are more heavy duty, and those are relegated to district crews, to our foremen, and they're particularly suitable for the environment that they have to work in. The replacement schedule for the pickup trucks is 120 months or 100,000 miles, whichever one of those we hit first. The average age of our pickup trucks, when you look at the sum total, is 62 months. So we're right there near the middle. And that, again, is due to significant investment by this board over the last several years. The average mileage on that part of the fleet is about 81,000 miles. We want to get it down to about 50. So there's still some work to be done there. Out of the 46, 21 of them are overdue for replacement. The 3/4-ton trucks are 35, 37,000 a piece. We get a major discount on the MyDeal program compared to what you and I would pay at Suburban Chevrolet or Varsity Ford. Municipal pricing is quite a discount. And the half-ton pickups are around 28 to 30,000. That's fully outfitted, ready to work. So when you add all that up, it's about 680,000 in current needs. Commissioner Barb Fuller.
Thanks, Jim. So I can assume that we're not turning trucks over at 62 months when their life is 120 months. That's what I'm trying to clarify in your descriptions here.
You are correct.
We're working on those old geezers that need to be moved along. Okay.
You are correct.
Okay.
Yes. We are striving to get that full schedule out of these pieces of equipment before we dispose of them through auction, typically. Commissioner McCollum.
Yes. How is that getting the pickup trucks? How is that working with the current chip, trying to get the chips in the vehicles, the new vehicles?
Similar problem. The computer chip shortage is affecting this, and there is a significant delay in getting this equipment. So the sooner you place your order, the sooner you get in line, and hopefully the sooner you get the equipment. But it is delaying delivery of this. It's a factor. Yep. Moving along, graders. Another really important piece of equipment, especially non-winter. We've got many, many miles of unpaved road in Washtenaw County, and these machines are essential to maintaining those unpaved road surfaces. These pieces of equipment are used in the wintertime as well. You can see this large apparatus on the front of this grader. This is a plow stand, and we can put a large V plow on that, or a plow that plows or discharges the snow to the right. And when we have heavy snow events and the blowing and drifting that Commissioner Barb Fuller experiences out in the rural part of the county, it's not uncommon to have a motor grader out there blowing a hole through those drifted roads, and then the heavy trucks would come in behind further scrape the road and clean it up for public travel. But the bread and butter use of this machine is in the summertime on our miles and miles and miles of gravel road, scraping, just as you're seeing here. This is actually part of a limestone resurfacing project. They're used for that, whether it's gravel or limestone. They're also used just routine maintenance, scraping the road, especially immediately prior to brining for dust control. So these are essential pieces of equipment. The board has made considerable investment in these machines. It's about $280,000 for one of these. And it really, we've gotten to the point where we're in a manageable position. Back in 08, 09, we were in a really tough spot, and these machines were prone to break down. They were becoming money pits where engine failures, transmission failures, differential failures, that's all part of this drivetrain here in these rear axles. It just worn out iron and not reliable. And as a result of your investments, we've corrected course with these pieces of equipment. We've got 11. There are 2 of these assigned to each district, but for District 2. Joanne, that's Ypsi and Pittsfield Township. We don't have that many miles of gravel road there, so we don't need 2. We get away with 1. And we look to replace these at 120 months or 10,000 hours. We look at chronometer, not odometer on these. It's how many hours are on the machine. Right now, the average age of this fleet of 11 is 58 months. So we're right where we want to be in terms of average age. And the average chronometer is 4,600 hours. So we're below half of that 10,000 barb. So we're right where we need to be on this. But again, this never ends. The equipment depreciates, it ages, it gets hours on it, and we want to be strategic and replace it at the appropriate time from a dollars and cents viewpoint. Presently, there's no overdue replacements, but we have 3 projected for probable replacement next year. And the Caterpillars, like that one, we were smart. We have a guaranteed buyback. So at 10 years or 10,000 hours, before that, those thresholds, we are guaranteed a buyback on that. In this case, one of those is 110,000. So you take the $280,000 for a brand new one and deduct 110, and that would be our net out-of-pocket purchase for that brand new grader. And that was a really important condition in those purchases back in 2013. So I'm really pleased about that. The vast improvement in the grader fleet. Proposed budget.
Question.
Yes, Commissioner Doug Fuller.
What's the lead time right now from Caterpillar, or for that matter, John Deere, for such a device?
We're seeing, I'm about 6 months. That could be longer based on all the things that we're all aware of about steel, about manufacturing, supply chain economics right now. It could be longer, but about 6 months. And sometimes that machine's sitting on a lot somewhere in North America, and we're able to get our name on it and get it sooner.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Preliminarily, the board, when it went through its second quarter budget review with Mr. Ackerman recently and Cheryl, identified projected $4 million capital expenditure for equipment for next year, fiscal year 22 and 23. Those are projections. There's a lot of moving parts to the budget, as you well know, but we're developing a plan based on that amount. Plus, we've got about $150,000 carryover from this year to next year. You'll recall that we had a catastrophic fire that resulted in the total loss of one of our tractor boom mowers assigned to District 6. And insurance reimbursed us for a good portion of that. The board authorized a couple meetings ago replacement of that machine. That order has been placed. But again, to Commissioner Doug Fuller and Barb Fuller's earlier comments, There's a delay. We won't take delivery of that new machine until next spring. Historically, it's quicker than that, but next spring. So that amount will carry over from this budget to next year's budget. So that'd be in addition to the projected 4 million. What are we recommending? Really asking the board to focus on these categories. Heavy trucks first. We have been securing purchase authorization for 4 trucks a year. That's competed, those expenses have competed with many other equipment purchases. Expensive things like loaders, graders, seal coat equipment, a Vector, hundreds of thousands of dollars of other things. And so we've been limiting ourselves to 4 trucks a year. Well, we've gotten caught up in a lot of those other categories, and what I'll be proposing to the board with the managing director's support is early in September coming to you with a request for purchase authorization for 11 heavy trucks for next year. That'd be next year's expenditures. The board, if it's so inclined, would approve that and allow us to place those orders now and get in line. And hopefully we'd take delivery of those probably December of next year, right at the beginning of next year's winter. A lot of X factors involved in that, but that's our hope. And yes, you're making a commitment and appropriating funds before your budget's been approved for next year, but that's what you've been doing the last couple years to good effect in getting us in line and making that commitment early so that those orders are placed for the cab chassis and the upfitting. Commissioner Barb Fuller.
I'd just like to point out that Jim's projected purchase authorizations, 11 heavy trucks, but there are 14 that are overdue for replacement, 15 pickups, but there are 21 overdue for replacement. So we're still peeling this onion on getting to where we need to be to have a fleet that's fully operational, doesn't make Mike Livesey stay up all night trying to keep things on the road. And I also believe it's a factor in recruiting and retaining talented drivers. Who wants to come and work in an old rust bucket? So I think if we can find it within our resources, the collective mind hive of the managing director and her senior staff to put this together and find a way to make it work, that it's a prudent investment that helps us in many different ways.
Agreed. You'll notice, quick arithmetic, the total of what's reflected on the screen exceeds 4 million. It exceeds the 4 million plus the tractor boom mower amount. You're like, okay, Jim, you're asking for more than what we're preliminarily appropriating, and that would be a true statement. How would we accomplish that? We would be liquidating equipment and generating salvage value for revenue from auctioning off or trading in equipment, and that reduces the total out-of-pocket cost. There's a net impact from that. And so that asterisk at the bottom is reducing this total cost through trade-in, auction proceeds, that guaranteed buyback for greater. Mike and I, working under Cheryl's leadership, are very in tune with those financial realities and work hard to stay within our budgetary limits. Commissioner Green.
Sure. Just kind of curious, Jim, if a new grader, or I'm sorry, heavy truck runs about 290,000, right?
Correct.
What's the salvage value?
It depends on what we're disposing. We're realizing revenue right now. A really worn out heavy truck, we could get $10,000 for it. It's almost scrap steel and maybe a few salvageable parts. Some of the ones that are a little newer and in much relatively better condition than that, we could see 40, 50,000 for. So it depends on the condition and the age and inherent value of that, what we're getting rid of.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim, if I may just build on some of what Barb was stating earlier.
Please.
Part of what you're going to see here today is a theme, and that really is getting at trying to take a balanced approach. We have many needs in many areas. We're just talking about equipment right now, which is essential for us to be able to carry out the responsibilities that we have each and every day. It does go a long way towards supporting our staff. They take great pride in what they are doing, and for us to be able to give them the tools and the equipment to be able to do what they need to do is essential for them to be able to complete those functions. And to keep their morale up. Like you said, Barb, no one wants to jump into a rust bucket each and every day. So we do our best to avoid that where we can, although sometimes that does happen. But we'll be talking about facilities next. And again, similarly, we have to keep those in good working condition in order to be able to support our core mission of what we need to do. And then shortly, we'll be talking about our asset management plan. And that's really getting into the county road system that we also have responsibility to take care of. So there is a theme here today. It gets back to a lot of what we talked about with budgeting as well, is that we have many, many needs. And hopefully what you're going to see are strong recommendations of how to balance all of those needs and still live within. We very much recognize the limited revenue that we do have and trying to take a prudent approach in those investments.
I could not have said that better. I completely subscribe to that. And there is a theme, and I'm grateful that we've got all these things going on during this working session. Hopefully that'll be one of the takeaways is that balanced approach. Equipment is expensive. Equipment is necessary. It is the 800-pound economic gorilla in the room that you look at that first slide was terribly neglected by this agency for years. And we are digging our way out of that hole. This equipment is essential to meeting our statutory mission. It's not just having shiny new things. It immediately starts to depreciate and deteriorate, and it is a cost that never ends. So my gratitude to this board for its commitment in making sure we're well equipped with good equipment. With that, I've got 20 minutes left, and I wish to get right into the facilities presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing this one and try to share the other one. Emily's trained me well, so I think I'm going to make this work. Commissioner Barb Fuller, will you tell me when you can see that? Good. All right. Without further ado, about 20 minutes. My boss said to stay within my time limit here. I'm going to do my best.
Jim, do you want to launch the, I'm sorry, do you want to launch the slideshow right now? We can see your, like the PowerPoint version, not the slideshow version.
I do have it launched, and it's, for some reason, not cooperating.
Might be on a different screen.
I think so. Let me move it over here and see if we can do it again. Share. Try it again.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you for helping me. Facilities, absolutely essential to be able to support our mission. There we go. I wanted to start with an overview and quickly get to the gist of this presentation. We own several pieces of property. We own several and operate several facilities. Our central facility being here on Zeeb Road and our main yard. There's a lot of activity, a lot of staff that work in and out of here. Think of it as the hub of the wheel. And decades ago, the Road Commission determined that in order to be most efficient and reduce haul time, be proximate to a base location, we carved the county up into maintenance districts, and we established satellite maintenance yards more or less in the middle of those maintenance districts. And that concept's continued to serve the agency very well. This is not uncommon for road commissions across the state. Haul distances add time, and it costs fuel, it burns up tires, and the time is response to whatever the need may be on the road system. So you can imagine if we only had 1 yard here at Zeeb Road and we had a down tree on Wellwood, and we had dozens of down trees on Wellwood here last week that Rourke Freeman and his crew had to attend to. Imagine the travel distance and time to get all the way down here, mobilize and deal with that, and then come all the way back for fuel resupply. It's not an efficient system. So we have a system where we have a yard centrally located in the northwest quadrant of the county, one in the southwest quadrant of the county, right here. We have now one that's a little off center, but it works perfectly well at the Northeast Service Center, south of Whitmore Lake, servicing the northeast part of the county. Then our Southeast Service Center for the southeast quadrant, and then our main yard, of course, the hub of the wheel. It's a good model and it continues to serve us well. Again, that's a simplified map showing the maintenance districts and the areas of responsibility across the county. An aerial view of the main yard. Just wanted to focus on a couple of things. Our administration building is a little over 20 years old. I can remember the old one being right here. This is a relatively newer building, but it's aging every year and it has its own needs for maintenance and sustainability. Behind it, late 50s, early 60s maintenance garage and shop. It's where Mr. Livesey and his team of mechanics work out of. Jeff Mann, our stockroom. Our parking garage houses a lot of our equipment and material. Outside, cold storage barns, fuel depot, the salt dome. Salt dome's really one of the focal points of this conversation. You recall in 2018, the board granted conceptual approval to a site plan, a concept for this property, and it would replace a lot of this aged facilities here with new facilities further to the west and the northwest of our property. About a $45 million multi-phase investment. This is Southeast Service Center, parking garage. This was built in 1999. This consolidated 2 yards. One was in off of Willis Road near Stony Creek, and the other one was off of Tyler. Consolidated old, outdated facilities, inadequate facilities into a modern campus, modern satellite facility here. Salt barn, fuel depot, cold storage barns, office. 2 crews report in and out of this, plus 2 mechanics that are supervised by Mike Livesey in the shop here at this location. That site's basically built out. We're in a maintenance mode going forward. This is yard 3 in Chelsea off of West Middle Street. It's about 3.5 acres. We've put about everything we can possibly put in here, except for maybe a little bump out to expand their break room and office area right here. And also our intention is to, where all these material stockpiles are, is to build foundation, pour a slab, concrete slab, and put up concrete bin blocks, or kind of like giant Lego blocks, in order to put all this material on a hard surface and get it backed by effectively a retaining wall, similar to the system we have at Northeast Service Center, to better manage those materials. This is the Manchester yard off of Ann Arbor Street, M52, on the north side of downtown village of Manchester. It's about 10 acres. Ultimately, the hope would be to build a modern maintenance facility back here toward the eastern port of the property and replace these aging facilities right here. This garage is the second part of the gist of this presentation. Northeast Service Center, we took occupancy in January of 2018. It's new, ultra modern, one of the more modern road commission facilities in the state of Michigan, and it will serve the northeast part of our county for years to come. 50 to 60 year design life, if not longer. We're very proud of that and grateful for the board's investment in that part of the county. 2 things I wanted to talk to the board about. This is the expensive one. set aside the $45 million master plan for this property. Let's focus specifically on one element of that that's more pressing, and that's our salt dome. This concrete dome was constructed in 1981. It was to mitigate an environmental impact that this agency was causing, where we stockpile our salt out on this pavement in the open, and over a period of time, water runoff contaminated the ground in proximate to our property. And we went through a rather expensive remediation and monitoring of all of that, and were compelled to build a storage facility to house our salt so that it wasn't sitting out in the natural environment. Yes, we use salt, we apply it to the road system, and it's very regulated and controlled and strategic to de-ice pavement. So we work hard to minimize the environmental impact from that activity. But in terms of storage, salt has to be undercover. This dome is beyond its service life. Back in 2018, I engaged a company out of Idaho that specializes in concrete domes nationwide, and had them send a structural engineer here. It just so happened Kent County Road Commission has a couple concrete domes, and they also had that company analyze their domes. No surprise, the dome is beyond its service life. It needs to be replaced. Structurally, it's still standing. Collapse does not seem to be imminent, according to those professionals. There's no settlement or deformation in the structure of the dome. It's basically a big arch, so it has a lot of strength, inherent strength, but it's not getting younger. It's not healing itself. It's not improving in condition. The reinforcing steel that's embedded in the concrete shell is corroding. Moisture is seeping through the shell. The Road Commission 25 years ago attempted to put a membrane on that to preserve it and keep the moisture out, and that whole exercise failed miserably. You see remnants of that membrane here and there. So basically, we're in a situation right now, at the suggestion of the structural engineer, we are avoiding any impact or loading on that shell. Think of it as a big egg. So we've moved our piles in from the wall, and we're avoiding touching the wall. We don't want to impact that or load salt, sand, grit against the wall, cause a lateral loading of the wall. That's bought us some time while we figure out how to fund and replace this structure, this facility. These are the plans from 1980, the original design and that was constructed and exists today. These are photographs I took last week from inside the dome. You can see the gray shading. This is evidence of moisture that over the last many years is seeping through the shell inside. You can make out this grid pattern, and I'll have a zoom in of this, of the reinforcing steel that's embedded in here. The moisture and the environment in this dome is causing that to corrode, and that's compromising the integrity of the structure over its life. So that's compelling the Road Commission to come up with a solution. You can see the materials. We've still got a quantity of salt from last year, and we'll be bringing about 4,000 tons of salt to put in there in the next couple weeks. And there is some sand and some mixed material, sand salt mix in here currently as well. Bring your attention to these areas. You can see this cracking. There's no deformation in the concrete, but these are signs of degradation of the structure. And that's a close-up. You can see the grid is the reinforcing mesh that's embedded, and then you can see the other cracks that are propagated in a variety of directions. Again, seepage, corrosion, deterioration of the structure. Commissioner Green.
I'm just kind of curious, Jim. Does the moisture affect the viability of the material that are being stored there?
No, it does not.
Okay, thank you.
It's relatively dry inside. a dry environment. We do have 2 large fans that help maintain ventilation. Any of the diesel exhaust fumes that build from the delivery of the material or the heavy machinery in there, it exhausts that to keep that well ventilated. And that does help reduce the moisture in there as well. This is seepage coming from the outside through the concrete. So we've got concrete from fall of 2019, excuse me, I said 2018, 2019, fairly recent. Dome Technology structural engineers came and did a visual structure assessment. They didn't take any cores or anything like that. It was their expertise based on visual observation inside and outside. They know these domes. This is what they do for a living. Observed concrete deterioration that's ongoing, corrosion of the reinforcement that I just shared, an abundance of cracks. The dome not currently failing under the self-weight loading, but it's something all of us are monitoring continually. And if we see that, we're done. We won't allow people to go in there. And then we're going to be in an emergent situation where we've got to find a different way of managing our salt stockpile. So structural collapse does not seem imminent. Eventually it will, but it does not seem imminent at this time. So I don't want to be alarmist about this, but it is a concern. The corrosion and deterioration continue. The dome should be replaced with a new structure. And again, we've eliminated all loading on the dome shell. We've moved the piles inward and we're avoiding impacting that shell so that we're not compromising it by our own actions. This is a copy of the site plan. Yes.
It looks like Commissioner McCollum has a
Commissioner
question.
McCollum.
Oh, yes, I just wanted to know the difference between the concrete deterioration and concrete degradation, because you said it wasn't that, but it's deteriorating.
It's from all the cracking and there is surface spalling. It's degrading over time.
Oh, okay.
Degrading over time. This is a copy of the plan, the conceptual site plan that the board approved in 2018. Hobbs and Black Architects prepared this for us and presented to the board at that time. I think it was January of 2018. And I point out the existing dome here and the new salt barn back here to the north. This would be to the northwest. North is up on this page. So we build a new barn back here. This would be a 12,000 ton barn. It'd be along the lines of what you can recall seeing at Northeast Service Center, but much larger. That one's for 3,000 tons. This is 4 times that size. So it'd be tall reinforced concrete walls with openings, and then a timber gambrel truss system on top of that concrete wall with steel sheeting for the roofing material. There'd be lean-tos on the sides of it for brine tanks. For our salt brine, we use for winter and non-winter for dust control and pavement de-icing. And then there'd be an area for our Vactor to dump material into. That's part of our waste that we generate when we clean out storm sewers and culverts and catch basins. We dump that in here as we do at Northeast Service Center. The liquid waste would leach off, go into underground containment, go off to the sanitary sewer, and then the solid that's left would be hauled to landfill and disposed of. And that's economical because we're paying by the ton for the disposal. So if it's drier, that reduces our cost over the long term. More environmentally appropriate for the disposal of that waste that we generate. So this is where the new barn would be built. That's about a $3.5 million investment because you've got to build the infrastructure and road and pavement and foundation, and then utilities, which would be water and electricity, and there's sanitary sewer out discharge from the back dump. So there's infrastructure that has to be built before you even begin to go vertical with a building. That takes planning, that takes design, and that takes time. So it'd be my recommendation that we initiate that process, the planning and design, and site plan review and approval from Scioto Township next year, and then be prepared to make the construction investment in 2023. All the while being very careful with our existing structure, monitoring its condition, but preparing for replacement of that building. The $3.5 million comes from Hobbs and Black's estimate from 2018. Then Manchester, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like Commissioner Fuller has her hand up, and then I was going to ask if you could address a potential MDOT participation at some point too.
Commissioner Barb Fuller.
You're on page 17 of your, that you just alluded, it was the previous slide. You've got Hobbs and Black at $3.5 million. So then do I understand correctly that the demolition of the additional $30,000 is included in that 3.5, or that's in addition to the 3.5?
More or less included.
Okay. Okay.
These numbers.
I'm just trying to keep a list here.
Understood. These number, and there's no rush to demolish those facilities right away. We can take them out of service, so we could defer those costs until we're ready to move forward with the remainder of the site plan development here at the Road Commission. So no urgency on that. But again, this has all got to be designed and get current estimates of cost going forward. This is our garage at Manchester. It has a flat roof. It's a rubber membrane on wood decking that sits on the steel beams for the roof system. Commissioner Fuller?
Cheryl had mentioned something about MDOT's participation in the salt barn
Thank
project.
you for reminding me. Thank you. I apologize. Yes, for many years, MDOT, for contract counties like us, and there's about, out of the 83 counties, about 63 of them are contract counties, MDOT has availed a grant program for funding new chemical storage buildings, salt barns, salt domes, and also for the maintenance of those facilities. The dome is beyond maintenance. It's a replacement issue. MDOT is well aware of this. A couple years ago, MDOT ended its replacement funding. The legislature, I don't think, was in a position to continue funding that. They now have something like 400 chemical storage buildings across the state, their own MDOT facilities, cities, villages, and county road commissions that need replacement. Instead, they've got a token 400,000, I think, for the whole state that agencies can apply for maintenance, like new shingles or siding repair, things of that nature. And it's first come, first serve, and then the money is gone. We've used that for other barns. This is capital replacement for our salt dome. There is no indication that MDOT and the state's going to restore that funding mechanism. And to Cheryl's point, it's based on the 5-year average, the fractional use of salt that would come out of the facility for state trunk line maintenance versus county road maintenance. For our dome, it's about 50-50. So theoretically, if that funding was in place, MDOT would be sharing in half the cost of this new barn. But currently, that's all suspended and not funded. So we may be in a position where you have to go it alone. And MDOT continues to be a beneficiary of that, since we are a contract county for them. So hopefully in the next 2 years, perhaps politically and administratively, MDOT would restore that and be a funding partner. Commissioner Barb Fuller.
Again, I'm anticipating future infrastructure money from the federal government that, in my understanding, typically then flows through the state. And it seems to me in this conversation, it would make sense to go ahead and get started with the design so that we're shovel ready, so to speak, should those funds become available. We've got a proposal that's been well thought out and budgeted, ready to go, regardless of whether internally, the Washtenaw County Road Commission can identify funding for this, but to be ready for other opportunities, which this team is so skilled at monitoring and applying for and successfully securing. So just in this working session, my opinion is we need to start getting the plan in place so we're ready when and if funding becomes available.
I agree. It would be my recommendation that staff secure proposal from our architect, site civil engineer in preparation for our budget conversation this here in a few months, and that we have an opportunity to talk further about that, and then staff would have numbers for the board's consideration in the hope that we could get underway with site planning and design next year, and that actually be in the budget, and then prepare for the big expense in the following year. Yep.
So do you have a projection of what this design phase would cost separate from the 3.5 all-inclusive?
Rough numbers, and embedded in that 3.5, I'm hoping that would be 100, 120,000. But
okay.
I'm really speculating at this point. I'm not sure what the market is, what kind of demands the market would put on us with regard to that number. But that's the number that I understood from 2018.
Seems to me if there are a bunch of these that need replacement, we ought to be able to bundle some of these and get Hobbs and Black to do a,
Nice.
you know.
Commissioner Green?
So Jim, you said the estimate by Hobbs and Black was done in what, 2019 or 2018?
It was actually 2018. So it's a little
there's
dated.
good chance, right. So there's a good chance those costs are significantly higher now.
Yep. Up. And when you start talking about sanitary sewer and water and electric, those are X factors I don't have a good handle on at this point. You know, you start talking about site development and layout and architectural design, okay, but some of these other things get a little complicated. All doable, but would like to get a proposal.
So the sooner we get started on this, it will probably save us money, I suspect.
I agree. It won't get less expensive. I assure you of that.
Right.
Yeah. And then just finally with this one, this is a flat roof. It's failing. I'm going to switch. This is the back side of the Manchester yard. It is, again, it's a flat roof, 1961 construction. Our facilities personnel have done an excellent job patching it and doing their best to maintain it. It's outlived its usefulness. Here is Chelsea, and once upon a time, 24 years ago, this was a flat roof, and the road commission had a truss package put on here, so it's a pitched roof now, and put shingles on it. Looks like that. That's Chelsea. The plan then, as I understand it from staff that were here at the time, is that the road commission intended the following year to do that to Manchester. And for reasons unknown to me, we didn't. It was probably economics. Probably, oh, we'll just leave it that way and maintain it that way. Well, we're not in a position to build a new maintenance garage at Manchester, but we do have to maintain what we have. You see here evidence of our brand new windows that we put in that have vastly improved security and that building environment. The roof is really the next obvious thing to work on to replicate what we have at Manchester. And it would be my recommendation that we proceed with that next year. Much less cost than a brand new salt barn. With that, that concludes my presentations. I apologize for being a little over. Sorry, Matt. I'm gonna owe you a sandwich now, but happy to field any final questions the board may have.
Thank you, Jim. That was very informative. We had lots of really good questions throughout the presentation. So hopefully you found that useful. and at least have a sense of where staff's recommendations are going to be coming from in the near and slightly distant, but not too far off future as we start also looking at the budget for 2022. So let's see, Commissioner Fuller, it is now 10 after 10. What time would you like to reconvene? We have a break up next on our schedule.
Well, so we do. Let's give ourselves 10 minutes. Be back in place at 20 minutes after the hour, please. All right, it's 20 minutes after. Do we have everybody? Commissioner Green, are you there? We do have a quorum present, so I would like to get right back into it. Cheryl, if you would, please.
Sure thing. In a similar expedited manner, I'm not going to talk too much here. We've talked about equipment and facilities, and obviously our biggest responsibility is certainly with respect to the county road system. So we have Matt with us today, who is going to describe our asset management plan, which we do talk a lot about asset management on a lot of fronts. And this is not only a requirement, which Matt will address, but also something that I think is going to be a useful document to us in the future as we continue all of our planning efforts. So with that, I will hand it over to Matt.
Good morning again. I have with me on this meeting as well many staff that contributed to the asset management plan. Alan Squire, our GS developer, really helps us with knowing what we have and the condition, and even rates the roads themselves. Nate Murphy, our bridge engineer, focusing in on bridges, of course, and Brent Schlack, our assistant director of engineering, managing our traffic and safety section, and Aaron Burkholtz as well, who oversees our design and construction section. So many hands make light work. This morning's conversation here is ultimately part 2 of our asset management plan development. We had an initial conversation in a working session in May that started and kicked this project off. And ultimately here, this presentation is an executive summary of the plan that's in draft format that will be sent to you as a PDF document later this week for your review. With that, let's go ahead and look at the agenda for this presentation. We're going to go ahead and talk about the background, what we've been doing, the asset inventory and condition, plan projects over the next 3 years, the goals within the plan. We've got a few other elements we want to discuss with you, and of course, answer any questions that you may have, and feel free to ask questions along the way as well. Next slide. So asset management plan. As Cheryl indicated, we've been doing asset management for a long time, but in 2018, as we discussed previously, the state passed Public Act 325, requiring road agencies to submit an asset management plan every 3 years. And our first plan is due this October 2021. Next slide. The assets that are included in the plan are paved roads, bridges, culverts, and traffic signals. So we'll be talking about those. All right, let's move on to the background. Next slide. Asset and inventory condition. Again, these are the assets we just covered that we're going to be included in the plan. So we'll go into each of them in a little bit of depth here. Roads, obviously inherent to our name. The Road Commission is responsible for approximately 1,650 miles of public road, broken into 2 categories, county primary and local. We have roughly 600 miles of county primary, and the remainder of that is our local system. Next slide. What our roads are composed of, what are they built out of? Well, they've got a variety of services. The bulk of our paved roadways are asphalt. We have a few concrete roads, and then as we talked about this morning, we have many, many miles of gravel and limestone roads that we maintain as well. Next slide. For our paved roadways, we're required to do condition assessment using the PASER system. PASER stands for Pavement Surface Evaluation and Rating. It's a system of rating the roadways on a 1 through 10 scale, 10 being the best and 1 being the worst. And then we further break down that rating system to simplify it into good, fair, and poor roadways. We've been using the PASER system since the early 90s, so we've got a lot of data. Next slide. So this is an important slide where it basically looks at the current condition of our primary roadways using the PASER system. Green is good pavements, yellow is fair condition pavements, and red is poor condition. And so this is based on a percentage of our paved primary system. You can see in 2016, we had over 60% of our system in good and fair condition, which is a vast improvement. Cheryl and I this morning were looking at 2012, and the story is much different. We've made a lot of progress, and we continue to make progress as we look at these 3 data set years. And in 2018, you can see as we evaluate that bar graph, we gained ground in our good condition roadways, really taking and implementing those asset management strategies of making our investments in fair road condition or fair roadways and making them into good by resurfacing or preventative maintenance practices. And then also making good progress to turn some of our poor condition pavements into good as well. So you can see that red bar chart shrinking just a bit as you compare to 2016 to 18. And then more good news and trends as we look at 28 to 2020. Our good and fair roadways are over 70% of our system now. And you can see the green growing a bit and the red shrinking a bit. So all good trends. And so we're making good investment with our revenue that either MTF, federal funds, county millage, could be our partnerships as well. And I'll talk about some of that later on. So these are definitely good trends as we look at our paved primary system. Next slide. This is our local paved roadways. And as presented back in May, this is quite the different story. We can see the trends going in the wrong direction. Our poor condition roadways growing as we compare 2015, 2017, and 2019 data sets. Couple of factors. These roads are not eligible for federal funds. The age of our local roads, particularly our subdivision roads, Washtenaw County saw a lot of development in the 90s and 2000s, where we were building new subdivision roads. And if you do the math, I know time flies, we're at 2021 and those roads are 20 to 30 years old. So they're at the end of their service life. And the lack of local investment as compared to the needs really is getting us to where we're at. But go ahead, Commissioner Barfuller.
So Matt, just for clarification on that, what we're looking at right now, that slide, that's paved local roads, just
That's
to be
correct.
clear.
Yep.
Paved local
Yep.
roads.
The PACER system only evaluates pavements.
Thank you.
Commissioner Green?
Yeah, and what percentage of our primary roads are eligible for federal funds?
Mostly all. There are a few exceptions to that, of course. But by and large, our primary system is federal aid eligible. And there are a few local roads out there that are also federal aid eligible, but by and large, they are not.
That's what I was just gonna say. The converse is true for the local road system, which is most are not.
Yes. And one of the pieces of communication that I think is worthy of mention here is our local road program. It's a great program. Townships take advantage of the matching program that the board provides through its policy. But the communication piece of our township booklets really helps tell the story of local roads, local road funding, and some of the restraints in the law and some of the tools that we can overcome and do what we've done in the primary system. Is roads are actually a fairly easy and straightforward problem to solve. It just takes money and funding. And really that's where we can township by township develop strategies. And Jim has done a masterful job of working with our townships and particularly our gravel roadways, the pavements, which are very expensive. And each township takes a different strategy on how they address their local paved roadways. With that, I'd like to move on to the next slide and show a little bit of a comparison. So this comparison is on the left, we have statewide federal aid eligible roads. This is statewide. What is the present condition? And compared to our primary road system, which is generally speaking federal aid eligible. So as we look at this, we're doing really well. Our current condition is 73% of our roads are in good or fair condition, as compared to 61% statewide. So we're doing very well as it relates to the condition of our paved primary roads. Next slide, please. And then statewide on the local system, which we were looking at non-federal aid eligible statewide roads, and then comparing it to our local system, we're seeing a similar trend. Ultimately, a lot of what's being proposed for new revenue or federal level government, it's not going to solve these local road problems. Not going to solve the underfunding and lack of investment in the local road system. So we're doing the best we can. We have tools out there, but again, I would refer you to our local road program and township packets to go a little further in depth on this subject of local roads. Our asset management plan, really the focus is our primary system, but I wanted to kind of give you a kind of a state of where we're at with our local as well. Next slide. And talking about our unpaved roadways, the road commission is responsible for 78 miles of unpaved primary roads and 665 miles of unpaved local roads. Over the course of last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a lot of investment in those unpaved primary roadways where we've invested through MTF and millage, limestone resurfacing. And the local system, we've seen a lot of investment in various townships through our matching program. But one thing that the PACER does not do, it does not rate our local gravel or primary roadways. It just doesn't, it only focuses on pavement. Unpaved roads are difficult to evaluate as the conditions vary depending on the time and the season, but our operations staff are very aware of the general condition through direct observation. So they certainly know. And go ahead, Commissioner Artfola.
I just want to share an observation that, while it's very narrow, it may be relevant to other gravel roads as well. But the recent rain events that we have had have just ravaged the gravel roads. The crew out at Yard 4 works really hard to keep my road, in addition to others, from being all torn up with big gullies on the side and such. But then these rain events come and it just washes all that material elsewhere. I don't know how we account for that, whether it's going to fluctuate so wildly that there's no way to predict or project. But these rain events are different now than they have been historically, in my experience. And I'm just really concerned about how that gets addressed, because my road essentially is down to one lane because the gullies on either side. No criticism of the crew out at Yard 4 at all, but it's just crazy what the rain is doing to these gravel roads.
I think certainly the seasonal impacts of rain events will really underscore roadways that haven't been invested in some time. If you don't have a lot of limestone or material to work with, it will become very clear during rain events and during the springtime as well. And Jim, you can certainly speak to that if you'd like to add to.
You think you're absolutely right, Matt. It's lack of permanence. It's a soft surface road, and it's prone to erosion, sedimentation. It's, as Matt said, a number of factors contributing to it constantly changing. That condition evolving day to day almost, and some times of the year. I think where you're driving at, Barb, is the cost, and it's just routine maintenance costs and emergent maintenance costs that we bear as part of our normal operations. And it takes time to get to all those miles of road and restore them after major events like we had last week.
With that, I'd like to move on to our bridges. So the Road Commission is responsible for 126 bridges. And just to clarify, our definition of a bridge is any structure that has at least a 20-foot or greater span. So this is a great picture of a large span with beams and abutments where we're spanning a good portion of the water there. County bridge conditions. We don't have a PACER system, but what they have is a National Bridge Inventory, NBI, has a rating system similar to PACER, where you're going on a 10-point scale, and you can see the chart there. 9 is like new, and 0 to 2 is failed and critical. We are required by law to do biannual visual inspection of our bridges, and if we're in a serious or poor category, we look at them every year. Next slide, please. So here is a picture of our bridge conditions. On the right, we have what we have currently and as compared to the overall state. That's a big comparison. And for the most part, we're doing fairly well. Again, if we look at good and fair condition, 78% of our bridges are good or fair condition, as compared to the state, which is about 88%. I will say that for a local system, that is very good. We're trending very well. And our percentage of good bridges is quite a bit higher than the state as well. So we're in good shape on the bridges. Next subject, on an assets standpoint, we'd like to talk about culverts. So culverts, this is anything less than 20 feet. And we have inventoried about 2,415 culverts, of which we have 360 that are larger in nature and between that 5 feet and less than 20 feet category. And we have inspected all of those, and we will inspect them on a cycle of 4 years. As you may recall, the culverts are part of the focus of the Stormwater Asset Management Plan that was presented to the board back in 2020. We were the recipients of a SAW grant that put together our stormwater asset management plans, and in the grant as well, we've kind of focused in on our enclosed storm sewer and drainage structures on primary roads. Not necessarily a highlight in the this asset management plan, but we're referencing our stormwater asset management plan in this current asset management plan. So it's kind of a part of. So whenever we're doing primary road projects, we're also considering those assets. Next slide, please. Traffic signals. So the Road Commission has 95 traffic signals and also maintains 57 traffic signals on behalf of MDOT. We also have an advanced traffic management system. This includes point-to-point wireless communication, allows staff to monitor conditions, change and review timings. We also get alerts if there's outages, much like we did last week during the storm event. It wreaked havoc on a lot of our signals with dark or actually damage due to wind or power lines being blown over. So the modernization of our signal network has really helped us from a maintenance standpoint. And this has been accomplished through millions of dollars in CMAQ federal funds. And thanks to the good efforts of our traffic and safety staff that have administered and gone after all these CMAQ projects, has really put us in a great position to for maintenance standpoint and maintaining our traffic network. Next slide. So we've talked about what we have and what condition it's in. And now we want to talk about our planned projects. Next slide. Our focus and name of the game is extending the service life of our assets. Particularly pavements, we look at crack seal and seal coat, and that seal coat terminology includes chip seal and fog seal. We look at resurfacing, whether it's paved or unpaved, whether it's a limestone resurfacing or resurfacing with HMA. And then as we move into kind of our poor condition pavements, we look at pulverization and resurfacing, or reconstruction, which is it basically takes everything out and replaces it with new sub-base, aggregate base, and pavement. Our strategy is to apply the right fix at the right time at the right place. As we go down this list, it gets really expensive. From a seal coat that may be $40,000 a mile for a 2-lane county road, to resurfacing, which is about $200,000 a mile, to pulverize and resurface, which could be upwards to $350,000, $400,000 a mile, and reconstruct, that can be $1 million a mile. So it's very important for us to apply the right fix and not just wait till the end of the service life. Next slide. Go ahead, Commissioner Fuller. If you want to go to the next slide, that'd probably be good.
Yes. Are you going to, would you run through again the relative cost per mile of these various treatments? So
Yeah.
I can make a note over here on the side on my copy?
You
Please.
will actually, it will all be in the asset management plan that you will be receiving next week, the end of the week after this.
Okay.
But just to review, crack seal, fairly low cost solution. It's probably less than 10,000 a mile for 2-lane county road. Seal coat, roughly we'll call it $40,000 a mile. We're still kind of getting costs on our new chip seal and fog seal process.
Right.
We'll call it $40,000 a mile. Mill and resurface, upwards of $200,000 a mile. And the pulverized and resurface, depending on the width of the road, it can be anywhere from $350,000 to $400,000 a mile. And then the reconstruct is at least $1 million to $1.5 million a mile.
Thank you.
You bet. And you
So
can
Matt,
kind
we're
of
ranging,
go ahead, Commissioner Green.
yeah, we're ranging from 10,000 a mile to $1 million a mile.
Depending on the treatment and the condition of the road, you know,
Crack
obviously,
seal and reconstruct.
yeah, yep. And it's applying the right fix. So in the asset management plan, you'll kind of read through, it talks about applying the right treatment to the right pavement. So you're not going to crack seal a failed road. That's just throwing money away. You're not going to seal coat a failed pavement, because it's going to just completely come unglued. So you're looking to apply the right fix at the right time. So the plan will kind of go into that depth. This is just an executive summary. And the primary road network, which is about 600 miles, you can kind of see this is the amount of work we've done the last 3 years, and then what we're planning to do the next 3 years, including this year, 21, 22, and 23. You can see we've been very aggressive with our seal coating, and that really keeps those fair and good condition roads in good condition. Mill and resurface, although expensive, necessary. So you can see we've done, this is all in miles, 57 miles last 3 years, and we're planning for 42 in the coming years. Pulverize and resurface, we've done 22 miles in the last 3 and planning for 13 and just over 13. And then the reconstructs, we've done 3.5 miles the last 3 years, and we're planning for 1 mile in the next 3. So, and again, as we refine these plans and as we develop budgets for each of these years, we can certainly add to planned project lists, and we've done that. But we're conservative in nature. Commissioner Fuller?
I think our managing director had a comment or a question before I raised my hand.
I was just going to comment or to share, and Matt did a little bit, but in addition with what Rod was saying, the extreme differences in the cost of what it costs to crack seal a road all the way up to reconstruct a road really highlights the reason we're using these asset management principles. It is much cheaper to crack seal or to seal coat a road than it is to reconstruct a road. So everything that we can do to keep those roads that are good and fair condition with those low cost preventative maintenance type treatments, that is the best investment. That's the best bang for the buck that we can possibly do. Because if we let a road get to the point where we have to do a reconstruct or even a pulverize and resurface, you can see how much more expensive that is. And we really want to avoid that as much as possible. We're not to the point with the limited resources that we have to be able to avoid it at all costs. And we certainly have roads that are out there those are the only alternatives that exist at this point. Like Matt said, to try to do something else to those roads is just frankly throwing money away at this point. But when we can get ourselves to the point where the position where we really are making those lower cost investments, that is the heart of why we're doing asset management. So with that, Commissioner Fuller, I would be happy to turn it over to you.
Just a question, Matt, and maybe this will be in the full-blown plan as well, but when I remember, and Doug, I should remember because you've said it often enough, and I confess I didn't retain it. The life of a road that is crack sealed is extended X number of years, right? I mean, I think Doug used to say if we chip seal a road, it extends its life by 10 years. Am I remembering that right, approximately?
Well, I would say in the asset management plan, you know, a crack seal can extend 1 or 2 years. A seal
How
coat.
many? I'm sorry, how many?
The idea of a crack seal is
Your voice dropped out, Matt. I'm not.
That's okay. The idea of a crack seal is to keep the water out of the pavement. Water is our enemy when it comes to pavement management. It's going to freeze and thaw, and it'll make that crack a pothole. We've all kind of witnessed that. So arguably, it's going to extend the service life, but about a year is
Okay,
the best you're going to get out of a crack seal, and you're going to have to keep doing it. The
right.
better approach, rather than just crack sealing, is to do a seal coat. A chip seal will add a new surface, a top course surface, and then the fog seal is really going to seal it up and extend the service life, hopefully, 2-3 years, and at a very low cost as compared to resurfacing the road, which is $200,000 a mile. So you can see in this plan, we're looking at doing 100 miles of chip seal every year, and we're going to, really aggressively go with that chip seal or seal coat. Commissioner Green?
So Matt, you said the seal coat runs about 20,000 to 40,000 a mile?
The seal coat
Yes.
that we do is we do a chip seal and a fog seal. And Jim, this is our second year doing fog seal. What is your estimate on what it's costing for a typical 2-lane road?
Well, $18,000 a lane mile. So for a 2-lane mile, it'd be 36,000.
Yeah. So roughly speaking, $40,000 a mile is generally what we'll reference. And that pretty much covers us really well. Some are more, some are less.
That's what, about 2 to 4 years?
Yeah, we're shooting for 3 years. That'd be great. Mother Nature may be kind to us, but then Mother Nature may not be kind to us. It's all really going to depend on how severe our winter and our thaw is. So we could do a chip seal or even a mill and resurface. We've seen severe winters where it cracks through the first year, the first 6 months. It's highly discouraging, but it happens. So that's why it's very important for us to keep after it. It never goes away, the need. If we get 5 years, that's great out of a chip seal. But that's why we're constantly monitoring the condition of these roadways. We've made the commitment where we're going to rate the primary roads every year. I know I showed slides with every 2 years, but moving forward, we're looking at monitoring every year so that we can make good choices and pick good candidates when we're selecting projects for the year. All right, any further questions on this slide and treatments? Good conversation. All right, next slide, please. So on our bridges, the funding's laid out here for the next 3 years for projects that we're doing. 2021 is a bit of the year of the bridge. We're investing nearly $3 million. And a lot of that is coming from the local bridge program. We were very successful for that fiscal year in funding 2 bridge replacements, 2 rehabilitations, and we were very successful. We haven't been as successful, and that's the trouble with success, is in a competitive grant program, when your bridge conditions start to get better and better, the other agencies we compete against, their projects tend to rise to the top because they're in worse shape, so to speak. So we've really got to rely on our MTF investments. We've got some millage investments next year to look at rehabilitating and doing preventative maintenance on our bridges. So we see a decrease in investment, but we're hopeful that over the course of these 3 years, we're able to maintain our existing bridge conditions. Any questions on bridges? Go ahead, Commissioner Green.
Do we get any federal funding for bridges?
Yeah, that's by and large, that's what you see in 2021.
Our grant?
Yeah, it's eligible, but it's competitive grants.
Yeah, once again, the state continues to confuse us because they call it the local bridge program, For us, it's primarily on our primary road system, although there's of course an exception to that rule. But from their perspective, they mean not state roads and the locals, as in counties and cities. So we participate very heavily in the local bridge program. Those are typically federal dollars and primarily are going on the primary road system. So we just continue to be confusing in our terminology.
All right. Any other questions on bridges or the plan?
Matt, I do. How many bridges do the critical bridge program, is that what this is?
Well, what we're doing is we're investing into our 126 bridges. We have plans to invest in the next 3 years. And these are bridges that could be in critical condition, like Denison. It was eligible for a replacement, and Getty's. But much like the pavement asset management plan, bridges are the same way. If you can do some rehabilitation, you're going to extend the service life of that very important and expensive asset. Bridges are really expensive. You can see by the Denison Bridge, one little teeny dot on a map has cost us $1.5 million. And that covers, a couple hundred feet. But without that asset, that whole primary road network becomes disjointed and not connected, and you're cutting off access. So these bridges are a very important asset to keep in mind when we're taking that balanced approach.
And in these instances, the townships contribute something, nothing?
Primary bridges, they don't contribute anything.
Thank you.
In this,
That's another point of confusion.
yes, in this chart, we actually are making investment on local bridges. The Maple Foster and East Delhi Road bridges are local bridges. We are getting funding from the millage. And in the case of the East Delhi Road Bridge, there's a maintenance agreement with SIO whereby they are paying 50% of that project. So,
Okay. So ask, when one doesn't know for sure, ask. It sounds like there's no universal formula that applies when it comes
yes,
to
because when we talk those bridges, though, those 126 bridges, a portion of them are on the local system. And, the eligibility for funding, they're all eligible for MTF, but our policy is if it's a local bridge, it's treated like a local road. We need 50% of participation. And that could be accomplished via SAD, township agreement, and whatnot. So,
yeah, and Barb, you referenced the Critical Bridge Program, and I believe in the past that we have either have utilized or that was the formal name of what is now the Local Bridge Program.
Okay.
And the type of bridge work that you can do has been expanded, which I believe is why they changed the name, because they too are also focusing at the state level on doing preventative maintenance and rehabilitation work in addition to simply bridge replacement. So what we previously called the Critical Bridge Program is this Local Bridge Program. And to Matt's point, every now and then we have been successful in receiving funds from that program on a local road. Several years back, we had a project in Saline Township where that was the case. And then we do look, thankfully, 90% of the project is funded with this state or federal funds, but that 10% match is split equally between the township and the road commission because it's on a local road.
all right, we've gone down the whole bridges. Let's go on to goals. So goals, we've talked about what we have, what condition it's in, and what are our planned projects. Now we want to kind of go to goal setting. So here on the bar chart, you can kind of see our current road condition for the primary network, and then our goal. Our recommendation is that we can set a goal of achieving 80% of our primary paved roads in good or fair condition by 2023. We feel as if the planned projects, as we model things in RoadSaw, based on our reset numbers for when you do a mill and resurface or polarization resurface and a chip seal and resurface or chip seal, you can kind of predict where you're going to end up at the end of 2023. And we feel like we can achieve this goal of 80% of our roads in good or fair condition. Any questions on that goal? Okay. Next slide, please. And similarly, with the bridges, we feel with the investments we've made in 21, 22, and 23 that we have plans for, that we can at least maintain our current condition ratings for bridges. There isn't a large scale investment in 22 or 23 where we've gotten grants to replace, so we're not going to make headway on the poor, but we feel like we can still maintain our good and fair conditions at their present levels. Commissioner McCollum?
Yeah, I was just wondering about, you said you wanted to make a headway on the poor. What are the reasons for it not increasing, decreasing rather?
Well, we don't have any money to replace. And we are replacing a couple this year, but inevitably some of those fair condition bridges may slip into the poor category. That's just the nature of our assets. They have a limited service life, and as they approach the end of their service life, they're going to slip from good to fair and fair to poor. And inevitably, it'd be great if we had unlimited funding. We could really manage things and turn it in a very positive direction, but we're always going to have roads and bridges in poor conditions. We're not going to be able to get to everything, unfortunately. So we want to set realistic goals that are fiscally constrained, rather than aspirational goals that just, it's not the reality of our funding. Next slide, please. So we've talked a lot about what we're going to do. Well, we have a lot of lists of unfunded primary road projects, and I'll put them in 3 categories. As we look at paving and rehabilitation, and based on our PASER ratings, we've got about 50 miles of projects that tally to over $18 million in needs. For our bridges, we have over 13 bridges that need work, either rehabilitation or replacement. And again, these are expensive, $13.6 million of unfunded needs in our bridge category. And then culverts. Culverts are another one of the, much like the bridges, you're spending a lot of money in a spot location. In our culverts that are sizes between 5 and 20 feet, we've got 35 culverts that are in need of rehabilitation or replacement for over $16 million. So we've got a lot of unfunded needs out there. Commissioner Fuller?
Refresh my memory, please. At our last meeting, we passed a resolution supporting a proposal that I believe has now been forwarded to the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners for use of their American Rescue Plan dollars, a portion thereof, to help with some of these concerns. Can you refresh my memory? Is that a culvert specific?
I believe it's culverts on local roads.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be eligible for this funding. So we're, again, talking about unfunded primary road project needs. And in the plan, you'll actually see spreadsheets of lists of roads with various categories of, is it a rural road, urban road? Is it federal aid eligible? Is it, well, primary roads are all federal aid eligible. What's the traffic on the road? Is there truck restrictions? So it kind of gives you criteria for selection and candidates. If we were to get additional funds, you know, how would we spend those funds? All right, next slide. But we've always got to keep in mind, obviously condition ratings are important, but we have our road and bridge assets, but we have to maintain the system. We have to have staffing, and staffing has long-term liabilities and commitments. And then we heard this morning from Jim on the needs of facilities and equipment. So it is, we're not going to dig out all at once. It takes a methodical investment and strategy in those investment and planning efforts. We need to, again, take that balanced approach. Next slide. So other elements of the asset management plan, we talk about financial resources. Like I mentioned, we're fiscally constrained. We have our revenue sources, which is Michigan Transportation Fund, often referred to as MTF. You know, we get roughly $30+ million each year on that. Federal funds, we can get, it varies. Typically it's 4 to 20 million, depending on what projects we're managing, because we oftentimes are the recipients of federal and state grants, whether it's the local bridge program or CMAQ dollars or safety or TAP. Program can vary year to year. We have our county millage, which typically generates about $4 million of investment. And then we have our township partnerships. Jim and his staff are very successful at forging those partnerships on our local roads and even sometimes our primary system. And that can vary from year to year, average of $5 to $6 million a year. Next slide, please. We talk about our risk of failure analysis in the asset management plan. We want to consider our national highway system and emergency alternate routes. We want to look at geographic divides, typically our rivers like the Huron, the Saline, River Raisin, Mill Creek. We look at hospital access. We've got major medical facilities in U of M and St. Joe's and their Ann Arbor and Chelsea campuses. We have access to key commercial corridors and universities, many of those as well. And then from a bridge perspective, we want to look at scour critical. So that's where we have high velocities in our waters, where the water may erode or scour may occur in and around our foundations of our bridges. So we have to keep an eye on that. Next slide. And then as part of the plan, we're going to talk about coordination with others. We reference our community engagement policy and public engagement. Talk about our certainly our township meetings and partnerships, and then certainly utility coordination on our major projects for project-specific needs of relocation, and then also working with our utility companies to describe our using this plan to say, here's what we're doing the next 3 years. Hopefully it aligns with you, and maybe we can work together to plan properly on road segments that maybe you have plans for. So that is always underway and ever changing. Next slide. So next steps. Like I said, this is an executive summary of the plan. We're going to get the draft PDF document out to you this week. Give you a chance to review it, ask questions, send them to me. I can certainly get your question addressed and answered. We'd like to bring it back to the board on the 7th, but at the latest the 21st that we need action. because we need to submit this with a board resolution approving it. And it needs to be submitted on or before October 1st of this year. Go ahead, Commissioner Fuller. Nope, you're muted. I'm sorry.
I'm asking in advance for a color hard copy of this plan that will be asked to approve. So I've got a chance to actually go through it and make notes on it. Let me know when it's ready and I'll swing by to pick it up.
I would anticipate we'd have something for you Thursday.
Okay, what time?
We'll say end of day.
Okay, I mean,
Sometime.
right? I mean,
Yeah, 3 o'clock.
I will make a note. Thank you.
You bet.
And if anybody else would like a hard copy, let us know. We can certainly make those available. Okay, I see Commissioner Green raising his hand.
We'll go ahead and make 5 copies.
We can do that.
Yeah,
But we also need to know if they're going to be picked up or mailed. So
absolutely.
helpful as well. Any more questions or many more questions for Matt? Obviously, that was a lot of information, and that's part of why we wanted to go through that first before we just, slap this document on your desk, so to speak, in front of you and asked you to read it. So hopefully this gives some context. And as we've talked about a whole bunch of different assets, roads, bridges, everything covered in the asset management plan, as well as what we talked about earlier. It also hopefully lays the groundwork for why some of the goals are perhaps not completely, aspirational where we would like them to be, but we're trying to make them realistic and ones that we hope are achievable, and then continuing to move forward. Really liked the graph where we saw where we were headed with the primary roads, and that took a lot of investment, a lot of time to get there. Hopefully we can encourage our partners so that we have the financial resources to make similar progress on the local road system. And Jim did a nice job of demonstrating that we've been chipping away at equipment and certainly on facilities as well. So it's nice to see those types of trends. Commissioner Green, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so Matt, beside the major funding sources that you just identified, and I guess the possible addition of SADs, is that pretty much it?
Yeah, the special assessment districts are a great tool for our partners. Obviously, each individual township can also pass a millage. So you can have local millages. And we do have township millages out there as well. And just to give you a heads up, it is about a 40-page document for reading, and then there's another 10 pages of the appendix with a lot of maps and charts and whatnot. So,
and Matt, how large was that? There's a template they had originally given us to use, and how much did you and Emily chop off the
I think
template?
that the template was about 150 pages, and we thought that was excessive. So we made it our own, and hopefully it will be, it's one of those things where it's a legal mandated report, but we wanted to tailor it so that it made sense and makes sense for us, and it tells a story and fulfills the requirement of law as well. Commissioner Fuller, you had a question?
I have a comment. We currently have been successful in having the voters of Washtenaw County approve, if I'm correct, a $500,000 towards roads. And I think it bears study and reflection on the millages that the County Board of Commissioners levies countywide for other purposes, and see how those tally up as compared to roads and how many people's lives actually are touched by the roads versus other programs. And I don't know where we can take this or how quickly. I know we've been reluctant to ask for more than a $500,000 for fear that we would end up with nothing. But I really believe that we can demonstrate we've been very good stewards with that $500,000, done great work. And holy cow, what could we do with a full mill going forward? I don't think it's too early to start planting the seeds of those conversations with county commissioners, with township officials. And I don't know if we have anything in the can, so to speak, to say what would we do with additional dollars. But if there's a drumbeat out there from people saying, you know what, the roads help everybody, everywhere, every day. Let's beef up what we're investing in those.
Certainly our unfunded list is approaching 50 million. So, and that's just on the primary system. So there is a need there. We can certainly use that money. It's just a question of what is the will of the people and the willingness of our county board to support such a request.
And I would just suggest, without criticism, that we need to start talking about this now. Oh, you know why we have this big unfunded list? It's because this is what we could do to that. We could chip away at that unfunded list if the voters of Washtenaw County would approve just a little bit more for the roads. And we can demonstrate that's where it goes. You guys aren't all driving big fancy cars. We don't have facilities with atriums and fountains and all of that jazz. We make good use of those dollars. And we're pretty frugal with what we're willing to do. We have canceled projects where the bids were too high because we didn't believe that was a good use of the funds that we get. So just, again, start having those conversations. Gosh, you know, it's been a great year, these millages. You've seen the signs, right? You're driving around. Oh, that project was made possible because of that $500,000. Well, we could do even more in your community if it will bubble up at the right time. We'll have new county commissioners after the elections next year. It's important to start having those conversations in an affirming way, not as in a whining way. That doesn't get you much. So just be thinking about that as we're all moving around in the community and talking to stakeholders and opinion leaders. How can we get that conversation going in the right direction so that we're ready to take advantage of that goodwill the next time we need to go to the Board of Commissioners for a renew and restore or perhaps increase of this millage?
Yeah, I think this asset management plan will lay the groundwork for that. It will show the good work that we have done and the progress we've made on the primary system. But yet with the unfunded list, you can say there's a lot of work to do.
We also, if you look at the township booklets that we distributed, we also highlight the different funding mechanisms that are available for townships, whether it be special assessment districts, and they can do them by neighborhood, or they can do them township wide. Millages, again, trying to put tools into our township's hands, knowing that the local road system, you all saw that graph, doesn't look pretty at all, and certainly not trending in the right direction. So trying to encourage them to invest or to educate their constituents, the same ones that we serve as well, on how we can start to address the local road system. Like to point out that Lodi Township, which is a pretty conservative area, was able to pass a full 1 mil road millage last November. And we've been working very closely with Lodi Township on starting those improvements this very year. So hopefully, you know, they've seen the need, and their residents were willing to say yes to that. And it was a full mill in Lodi Township. So that was encouraging.
And we need to sing the praises of Lodi Township and what we were able to accomplish and say, see what they did?
Absolutely.
You can do that too. The money that's raised on a local SAD or millage stays right there. It doesn't go up the food chain and get distributed elsewhere. It's raised in that community and spent in that community, directed by that community in collaboration with the Road Commission, which is very appealing to people.
It's allowed Lodi Township to invest almost $1 million in local road improvements in their community. And they've selected the roads that they'd like us to work on.
Yep, reflects their priorities. Absolutely. Any other questions for Matt or any of the rest of our staff with respect to our various assets? All right, well, expect the draft asset management plan to arrive shortly, and we appreciate you taking a look at that. The last thing we have on the working session is the fact that our board meeting the first week of October is currently scheduled for the first Tuesday, as it always is, at 1 o'clock. And that would be Tuesday, October 5th. That also happens to coincide with the end of the CRA Commissioners Conference. And so I know in talking to Barb about that schedule and the fact that we currently have 4 out of 5 commissioners registered for the Commissioners Conference, which is up in the Traverse City area, we were wanting to poll to see if there's any interest in potentially moving that date from Tuesday, October 5th to Wednesday, October 6th, holding the 1 o'clock meeting time. I know that we don't typically move our meetings around. That's a pretty serious decision, but this does give us plenty of time to provide notice that we would be moving that meeting date for a very good reason.
I have a question, Cheryl. Were you able to pinpoint what the date is for canceling with our reservations or our registrations with the conference?
We did. In fact, if Erin could possibly answer that, if she's available, I have to say she did that for me and I don't remember the answer.
For the CRA, the cutoff date would be September 19th. For the hotel, that would just need a 72-hour notice. So we have plenty of time to cancel that. But we just need to know by September 19th.
Okay, so if I'm looking ahead at our calendar, the very last, it would be September 7th is the very last time we would meet before the cancellation deadline, right?
That is correct.
So not knowing what the COVID situation is going to be, that was the reason I asked. If things suddenly go sideways on COVID and people want to cancel, there would be no need to move that date of our board meeting at all. The flip side of that is the longer we wait to consider changing the date, the less time we have to notify the public that the date has changed. So I'm open to suggestions. I know Commissioner Doug Fuller does not like to move meeting dates at all, ever, barring any, disaster. And I agree with that. But I also believe the conference offerings are pretty good this time. And we've all expressed an interest in going. So we're not making a decision here today. I want people to think about it, get creative about when we would, the very last time we would need to make a decision on moving that meeting. But I don't see, if we're going to go to this conference, 4 of us, how we accommodate a 1 o'clock meeting on the end of the last day of the conference. Any thoughts, any reaction? Again, we're not making a decision today. Okay, please think, Commissioner Green.
Well, I'd just like to say that if we're going to do it, we should probably do it as early as possible so that the public has notice of it. So that's my only point. I have no objection to moving myself, because I think that, the 2 conflicts are unavoidable. But if we're going to do it, the earlier we do it is better. That's all.
Thank you. Oh, my screen's bouncing all over the place here. Did we lose Commissioner McCollum?
Yeah, it looks like we did. We'll try to work with her. Oh, here she is.
There she is. Commissioner McCollum, did you have any thoughts to share on that particular question?
Yes. Oh, can you hear me? I don't seem to have
Yes.
internet. Okay. We were talking about trying to do with our laptops from the conference, trying to do the meeting on the regular time. Would that not work out?
The wrinkle there is if you stay in place to tune in remotely, then you're not going to be able to get on the road until later in the afternoon. And it's what, a 5-hour drive?
Yeah.
So that was my only concern. I didn't want people on the road later, tired.
Yeah.
But I'm totally open to what other people want to do. I'm not inclined to stay an extra night to do the board meeting that afternoon.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So we have time to think about it. It won't be on today's agenda. It could be on our next meeting agenda, which is September 7th, which is
Correct, September 7th.
7th.
So we actually have an extra week in here for between this meeting and the first meeting in September.
All right.
Right. Barb, I did have one other thing real quick. I
Sure.
did send out a meeting request yesterday
Yes.
to all WCRC cell phone users. So that went to all staff and that did include commissioners. It's for 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, which I know is very bright and early, not so much for staff. They're all here, but for commissioners. So the intent of that meeting, it's very short, is to just talk about the fact that as part of records retention, we are learning that one of the things that we do need to be keeping, should we ever be subjected or receive a request under the Freedom of Information Act, so a FOIA request for communications, we need to be retaining text messages in addition to other forms of communication. And that's more of a challenge than what we had originally thought. So the purpose of this meeting is specifically to address that topic, to just talk about the mechanism and the how that we will be utilizing moving forward in order to capture those text messages so that we as an organization can properly respond to a FOIA should it come in, and be able to satisfy our legal obligation to to share that those types of communications in addition to everything else. I promise it'll be short. We needed to hold it early in the morning so that staff could get out on the road. Since most of our staff are out of the office, that is why they have cell phones. So again, I apologize. I know that's early, especially for commissioners. If you don't want to turn your camera on at 7 a.m., that's perfectly fine. You can be in your pajamas. You don't have to take a shower, drink a cup of coffee. If you could just listen in, that would be helpful. If you can't make it, let me know. We do have additional information that'll be sent out, but I just wanted you to know what the purpose of that meeting request was. It's not optional for staff.
Just a thought, Cheryl, would you please make a note to touch base with Commissioner Yamas? I don't anticipate that she'll be checking emails today or tomorrow for that, but just make her aware.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's it on our end, unless anybody has any questions.
Commissioners, anything?
That meeting tomorrow, Cheryl, I didn't get a chance to look at my email. The link and all that is on there for the meeting. Okay, thank you.
It's a Teams meeting, but yes, the link is on there.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Anything else? Seeing and hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this working session.
So moved.
Second.
Aaron, if you would please call the roll.
Commissioner Joanne McCullum,
Yes.
Commissioner Rod Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Doug Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Barb Fuller.
Yes, we are adjourned. We'll see everybody back here at 1 o'clock.